Particle Illusion has thousands of presets available, and these include a lot of creative trails emitters. I'm going to show you how you can easily use the light writing presets to create the look of long exposure trails inside of After Effects. My name is Ben Brownlee for Boris Effects. Let's get started. So I'm going to start with a new composition, and in this I'm going to add in a new solid layer, and I'm going to create a new text layer. Now the choice of font is really important here. We want something with big straight lines. We don't want any sort of fancy detail. If you're working with After Effects, you can always go into your Creative Cloud and find some new fonts that will fit this look. Okay, so let's center this in the composition. So let's bring our text layer underneath. I'm going to come up to Effects, BCC Particles, and Particle Illusion. And of course, to see anything, we need to launch Particle Illusion to choose which of the presets we're going to be working with. So inside of Particle Illusion, on the left-hand side, we have all of our presets available, and we can search in the library for anything that is tagged with trail, and that will show us all of the different libraries that have trails in there. I can pop into 2026. Let's zoom out a little bit here. And we can find not just the ones that have got trails, I'll find my light writing ones as well. So as I drag these around, you can see these are going to create lovely trails of light. And I can find the one that I want. What am I in the mood for? Actually, let's take Light Writer 03. And we can see here, if I play this back, it's just going to create a single point for me. Which then, doesn't really do anything. It doesn't give us those light streaks. But that's, of course, because these light writing emitters, they only really work when the element is in motion. So we could animate this directly in Particle Illusion by animating up the position, or what we're going to do is come back into After Effects and do it all in there. So if I hit apply, let's play back, we get that same look of just that single element burning into the center of the screen. All right, let's get this in motion. And we're going to use the text layer now to drive this automatically for us. And here are the things that you need to actually change. There's a few of them. So under transform and tracking, we need to make sure that the emitter is moving. Then we can say, take that path from a mask or text layer, and then we can open up this one and tell it what we want to do. Well, let's take text simultaneously because we're working with a text file, and tell it what the text layer is. So if I play back now, instead of just one point of light, we're now getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be one for every letter that we've got in here. Let's animate this. I can just use my path location, stopwatch at frame 0, animate this up at frame 100. Maybe they're set to 359. We don't want like a full rotation. We don't want it to go back, but this should give us something. Ooh, okay. So now we've got the basis for our lights. Let's come in and tweak this so we can actually read what the text is saying. It's not particularly legible at the moment. And here's where we open up our particle properties. The first thing we're going to do is take the size down. Right about there, and let's play back. And we can see it's now doing a trace around our text. If we want to make this a bit faster, let's hit U on the keyboard to bring up the keyframes. Maybe we'll add another couple of rotations here. So that just loops this around a bit faster and sort of fills in the details a bit more. So this could be the look that you're after, but I really want to get those sort of big streaks coming in, just sort of almost as if something is writing on instead. I'm going to choose a slightly different way of doing things. Firstly, let's bring the light up to the top again. Let's find a different font for this. Solo this out. I've got one that I do like here. This is another Adobe font. This is Lindsay Signature. The start point of this font is really, really important for us. So if we have this just as it is sort of by default, that's a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do is let's combine big and small, or capital and lowercase, uppercase? Yeah, uppercase and lowercase letters. Let's change the tracking on that. So give them a little bit more space. And let's make the I significantly smaller so it just fits in a little bit better there. So now we want to actually do a stroke over this. And there's a couple of different ways of doing this. The first way we can do is we can just right click on this. We can go create, and we can create masks from text. So if I do this, it's going to then take my text layer and turn this into a mask outline. Let's drag both of these layers down to the bottom, and let's show the particle illusion light here. But here now, instead of choosing the text, let's take the masks, and instead of taking them simultaneously, let's take them sequentially, so it does one letter after another. Let's choose my mask outlines. There we go. Just do a single rotation of this. Again, over 100 frames. So that's 359. And let's take a little look at what happens here. So currently it's doing everything we asked it to do, but it doesn't look as good as I wanted it to. Let's take a look at our light outlines over the top here. One of the reasons for this is that for every single stroke, we've actually got 2 times that we go over each letter. So that messes up our timing, because it's going to go around the outside here, come back, go back around, keep following this around, and go back up to go and finish our letter. Now we don't want it to do that. We only want it to sort of sweep through once, just like a regular brush would. The other thing is that we have actually extra shapes in here, so that also messes up our timing. So you can see we've got one that is in, I don't know, that's not aquamarine. What is it? What color? A shade of blue, let's say. And then we've got one that is a shade of pink. So if I hit M, you'll see that for some of the letters, the ones that have got loops in them, we've actually got 2 shapes going in. And I can happily just take those second, sometimes third or fourth shapes and just delete them. So this will fill in the gap, but that's fine because we just want the loop. Let's take a look at how this looks now. So we see it's moving faster because it's not taking the extra time to do the letters that we didn't want it to, but it's still going up and down and in and out. So it's still not exactly how we want it to look. And also it starts from a strange place. So these are a couple of things that we can change very easily. And I will say there's 2 main ways of doing it. Let's look at both of them. And the first thing we need to do is open up this shape. So to do that, I need to select exactly 2 points. And if we have chosen exactly 2 points, when I right click on this, go to mask and shape path, this closed will appear and I can turn it off. And then I now get an open shape. So to get just a single stroke, what we now need to do is delete half of the mask. In fact, I'm going to simplify this a ton as well. Like this is all very, very complex because when it created the original path, it sort of tried to fit it exactly how it looked previously, but this is more detail than I need. Properly simplify this out. So you can see this is a lot simpler than it was previously, a lot fewer points. The final thing we need to do here is just, because I don't want to muck about with changing up the Bezier splines here, it's a lot easier just to select all of them in the points in the path, right click again, change that to Roto Bezier, and that will give us a sort of smoother Roto Bezier path now, which is going to be a much easier to adjust. There we go. So that's very simple. Have I oversimplified it? I don't know. The only way we can actually see is if we play this back. There we go. I don't think I've oversimplified it. What we do have though is that same problem of the letter starting to draw in the wrong place. And that's because, if we take a little look here, this point here is our first vertex. So this is where everything's going to start drawing from. So if I come up to my top here and go right click on it again, I can set that as the first vertex. Let's just purge all our memory and disk cache, because some of the changes that we make don't trigger After Effects, say, render the frame again. And there we go. That's now drawing from the right place. It's a lot more simplified. So that's one way of doing it. It's still, you know, there's a lot of faff, let's say. There's a lot of extra work you have to do to simplify this. I might have oversimplified, but I think it looks all right. And this gets even worse when we're dealing with very complex letters, like this G as well, for example. So there is another way of doing it. Just tracing over the letter. So like creating a new mask in here and just tracing over where we had the previous one. So this actually could be easier if we can see the original letter here. Get rid of my G and just literally trace over this. So the advantage of doing it this way is that we have sort of full control over where those points are placed. In the general scheme of things, it's actually a lot faster than creating those outlines. I find that this is actually the preferable way to do it. If you do it this way, just remember to stick it in the right order. Otherwise, it's just going to draw it out of order. And we'll see the G is now drawing in exactly how we wanted it to. I want to shift focus now onto some of the most common problems or requests that I get about this sort of light writing. So I've come in and I have just tweaked all of this off camera. So as we play this back and see how it looks, there's a few things that I want to change to make this look a bit better. The first one we can see is that we have this big splotch at the end of the T. That's because the animation stops at frame 100, but the composition carries on for another 50 frames. So the easiest way of changing this up is to come into the number, add a keyframe, and then come to the very next frame and just set this to 0. So that's going to stop all of the particles being born after that particular frame. The other thing we want to have a look at is that if I zoom in, on some of these we can see we have trails coming in between the letter strokes. And again, that is being controlled by this number. What we'll do is we will set a number keyframe, take that down to 0 for the next frame. I'll actually set this as a hold frame, so I'm going to hold down Control and Alt on Windows or Command and Option on Mac. And then at some point in the near future, I'll just come back up. I can't remember what that value was, so I'm just going to copy and paste that keyframe back in. So this gives me my 3 keyframes that I need for it to get rid of that trail. Let's turn the brightness up on this so we can see this even more just in the viewer. And to make sure that this moves into place properly, I'll just have those 3 keyframes selected, and I'm just going to come in and just shift those into place. Like there'll be a moment, there we go, where we see the trail of the move over. There we go. And I'll just adjust that last keyframe as well so we get the beginning of the next stroke. Now, depending on how big and how fast your animation is, that's going to just shift a couple of keyframes. So it's not going to be a big deal. I'll do exactly the same with the next one between the I and the G. So I'll copy, paste, and I'll just shift those keyframes into place until, there we go, we see the trail between the letters just disappear. So with that done, the next thing I want to do is look at the fact that all of the strokes are the same thickness, and that's easy to fix as well. And this is done by changing up the size. So let's add a keyframe on the size, somewhere at frame 10-ish, and then I'll take the size down, maybe not down to exactly 0, but I'll take it down a bit lower, and we can see we get a sort of more tapered edge there. I want to change the tapering. We can just shift the keyframe up. It's kind of nice. and just copying those two keyframes for the next strokes as well. The next one I want to look at is if you think that the letters are fading too quickly. That's an easy one to fix. All we have to do is come into life and change up the life value. You'll usually find that the emitters have some sort of color changes, or the preset emitters have color changes over life. So you might want to bring this up or down depending on how you're feeling. One common issue you can have as well, depending on your choice of font, how many letters you have and the speed of the animation, is that at 24, 25, 30 frames a second, what you can find is that your shapes themselves have this sort of squared off look. So we need to increase the time resolution. So let's crank the number up now so we can see this a bit easier. There we go. And you can definitely see the sharp turns that this is making. So to increase the time resolution, let's go to composition settings and let's just multiply everything by 5. So 25, that's 125. 125 times 5 is 625, 725. It doesn't matter. Let's say 625. And immediately you can now see that that is looking a lot smoother. So that's what it was looking like at 25 frames a second. And that's what it looks like at 125 frames a second. So it's filling in a lot of those gaps there. So we just have to render that out and dump it in. The final thing that I want to look at is how we deal with this light writing when we put it into a 3D tracked scene. So I have my scene here, which I have tracked and solved inside of Mocha Pro. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about how I did all of this, then we do have more videos on the Boris FX training site and YouTube channel. So let's copy the trails that we were working on previously and paste them into our 3D scene. Now we've got a bit of a position mismatch, so I'm just going to right click on these and go transform, reset. And also as part of the copying process, I just need to update the link to the correct layer now. There we go. So we have our light writing. Excellent. Let's change this to screen blend mode. And because Particle Illusion understands 3D, inside of After Effects, we can use the comp camera. There we go. I turn that on and everything kind of disappears. Now, usually this is just something like a scaling issue. Maybe we've got some offset issues here. All the data's there, we just can't see it. So I'm going to set my emitter offset to 0, 0 and the Z offset to 0 as well. And we can start to see the light popping in there. If I bring this up now, you can also see that maybe, just maybe, we've got a bit of a scaling issue happening now. So we could try to scale it down inside of Particle Illusion. You probably have a bit of success there, but actually where we really want to do things is scale down the original text at this point. Let's select all of our mask paths, double click to bring up the transform window, and I can just hold down Shift and Command or Control and just make that a bit smaller. We still want it to stay in the center, of course, but we'll just make it smaller. Nice. So now we have our blob. It's I'm not going to call it text yet. It's properly a blob. So another thing we've got is a mismatch in terms of size. Because we've already got our animation on size, I don't want to have to go in and change all of the keyframes. I just want to make the size smaller across the board. So I'm going to add an expression. So Alt Option click on the stopwatch, and I'll just let it call the this value times what, 0.25. Let's see if that works. Hey, that's pretty good. Maybe 0.2. Hey, even better. There we go. And at this point where we've got it pretty much where we need it to be, it's here where we can just come into the emitter offset and just line this up into place exactly where we want it to be. And this, of course, only touches on what we can start to do with some of the Particle Illusion emitters. If there's another particle topic that you want us to cover, please let us know down in the comments below. But for now, my name is Ben Brownlee for Boris Effects, and I'll see you again soon.